So hi, and thanks for tuning in. I decided that I wanted to start a new series about how to create some interesting ambient patches in Eurorack. I wanted to make it just because I found that when I started in Eurorack, I really needed a place to start from so that I could start tweaking things around and making my own sounds, but starting from a decent base. And I found that there really wasn't that many videos out there on YouTube, especially in the ambient space, about like what are some interesting ideas. So, I'll be making more of these in the future, so if you want to subscribe, you'll get updated when I make a few more with a few more modules. So let's get into this first one for now. So this first patch that I wanted to do is using two really fantastic and quite common modules in Ambient, which would be rings right here and clouds over here. Now I'm using microburst in this case, which is basically just a smaller HP version of clouds, but the same thing applies. These two are sort of maligned for overuse, but I still think that they make some amazing sounds, and they're a really, really good starting point if you're just getting into ambient in Eurorack. So first thing we're going to do is just patch up rings. We're going to send a quantized sequence into it. In this case, I'm going to be using marbles from up here, just because it makes some really interesting patterns sometimes. So we're going to patch all of these things up, but you could really use any quantized source that you like. Ornament of crime over here, or even, quantized random voltage, or anything like that. But we'll just make a pattern out of marbles here, and then I'm just going to really simply patch this through so that you can hear what it sounds like. So really pretty simple to start with. For the especially ambient sounds, I suggest that you look at using the red mode on this side of rings, which is the 4-voice polyphony. That's just going to let all of the notes ring out a little more. If I was to switch this into green mode, still sounds nice, but you don't get as much of that ambience or space to it, so as compared with this red mode. Secondly, I'd suggest starting with the green mode on this side. I believe it's called the modal synthesizer mode. Just creates a nice sound, especially if you leave structure here at this position. You can see if I change this, you start getting sort of dissonant sounds, but right around here, and if you're using the original rings, it's actually, you could see it marked right there by a little kind of piece of artwork. Keep it at that position and you'll have quite non-dissonant sounds. I don't know what the word is for that. Anyway, the other thing is brightness, dampening, and positioning. You can leave them around where they are here. You can experiment as you like with dampening and positioning. It has some interesting effects and slight timbral changes. The one I would suggest leaving where it is brightness though, because watch what happens as you turn this up. It sort of starts getting harsh, right? Versus down here, it's a much more calm sound, which I personally think is really great for ambient. So I mean, this is already a pretty good start, right? We are, it sounds great, but there's a lot of other things that we can do from here. So the first thing that let's look at is clouds. So we're just going to patch this up real quick. Now clouds is a granular synthesizer. So it kind of takes your sound and splits it up into a bunch of tiny, tiny pieces, which can be really interesting in ambient. So let's patch this together. I don't have anything turned on right now in clouds, it's just the raw signal going through, so you won't hear any difference right off the bat. Right, no real difference. So I'm running in granular mode, which is the first mode here in clouds, you can see right there. And I happen to be running the Parasites firmware rather, so I'll leave a link to this in the description. But you can run this on stock clouds as well, it won't be an issue. Parasites though has some really interesting other modes that I suggest that you check out. So the first thing we're going to do is just simply add some reverb from this granular mode in. So let's do that. right around 50% is a pretty good marker. And you can hear that's already, again, giving the sound some more space to breathe in. Right? So that's a good start. So the next thing I suggest that we do is add in the grains. Pay very close attention to the position of all of these knobs right now. This is a really good starting position to work from. Clouds can be a little bit finicky in terms of exactly where you have all the knobs set at, and if you don't have them quite set right, you can end up getting really strange sounds, which I'll show you in a second. So let's turn that on. You can see we're already starting to get much more droning kind of sound going on. And way more background ambience, which is really great. Now let me show you what I meant in terms of the positions of these knobs. So if I were to adjust texture, for instance, listen to this. It just starts turning into a bunch of delay. It's not really what you want. Right around here, maybe a little more to the left. Each of the individual grains ends up being much less harsh, and so they all kind of blend together nicely. Density is the same sort of thing if you listen. Doesn't blend quite as well here, but if you turn it up, much better. So those I'd suggest you leave alone, and also size. Size has the most crazy effect. Listen to this. Ooh. Yeah, craziness. So leave it at noon, and that'll pretty much do it for you. So we're already at a pretty good place here, right? But ambient music, especially in Eurorack, when you have all of these sources of modulation, is really all about how you modulate all of your sounds. So let me give you a few things that you might want to try to modulate from here. So first off, we could try working with the position knob. So if I were to twist this myself, you'll sort of hear what I mean. It adds a little bit of variance to the sound. Right? It's quite subtle, but it helps. So in order to do that, we could just, I've got tetrapad here, which is running in an LFO mode. You can see the status of the LFO right here. So it's just a fluctuating voltage. Patch this in to position. See what that sounds like. Nice, right? Now another interesting thing that I really like to do with clouds is to work with this freeze button here. So if I were to press this, you can see it'll hold the grains and just loop them. We ended up with a bit of a kind of pattern going on here. So, if we were to use something like stages over here, which is a segment generator, we're just going to use it because it gives us, we can set it up here to have a 50% chance of having a gate basically be on. We can send that into the freeze here, and if we advance this with a random clock, like from marbles, or a sequential clock, it doesn't really matter, like this. You can see we have a certain period of time when we're at a low voltage and a certain period of time when we're at a high voltage. Gives us an interesting gate that comes on at random times and lasts for a variable amount of time. So if we patch that up now, with a longer cable into the freeze. This is what we end up with. And finally, let me leave you with one more idea that you can use that's quite a drastic change from this. We're going to try a different mode here in Rings. So, first thing I suggest you do if you switch to this mode is turn your input gain down, because it's much, much louder, and you risk overloading everything. Turn this down a little bit. We're going to switch into orange mode. So it sounds relatively harsh, right? Maybe not quite as ambient anymore, but you know, it depends on your preference. But if you were to go now and turn the blend on clouds all the way up so that it's just clouds that you're hearing, you end up with a quite nice drone, I think, actually. Could maybe use a little bit of filtering, but we can get into that in later episodes. So, I hope that going over this little patch was useful for you. If you have any questions, you can feel free to leave them in the comments. Or if you want to suggest any modules that you'd like to see in another patch idea, I'd be more than happy to do another video on them. So thanks for watching, and take it easy. I'll leave you with this music for now.